For 16-year-old Troy and his younger mate Shane, a recent fishing trip to their favourite spot turned up more than they bargained for. Hidden for centuries on the riverbank were the fossilised remains of a creature that lived before the last ice age.
I was just walking along the rocks here and I seen this object sticking out of the ground. It looked to be a tooth. It was a rock. I picked it up and it was turned agate.
What the boys had found was an upper jawbone and a tooth. They showed their discoveries to a number of authorities, including Sydney's Australian Museum, now studying the specimens. It's identified the remains as those of a diprotodon, a huge marsupial around 3 metres high, described as a giant wombat with 2 forward-projecting teeth.
The potential for other discoveries, we know that these beds are now at least 20,000 years old. There could be other giant kangaroos, other giant marsupials, fossil reptiles.
Archaeologists say dinosaurs may have even roamed these parts, but the fossilised evidence that exists in Jurassic rocks have disappeared with the winds of time. Just to keep things in perspective, diprotodons existed up until 35,000 years ago, dinosaurs until 65 million years ago.
Some kids have been saying I've found all these dinosaur things around the place and that. I've been pretty proud of them and that.
Since their initial discovery, the boys have found another small tooth, but this time plan to hang on to their newfound treasure and, if they're lucky, hope to find more.
We're going to be planning more day trips and doing more digging and looking for the rest of it.
Melinda Smith, NBN News.
A very popular character these days, the dinosaur made a dramatic appearance under a makeshift big top at the Newcastle Entertainment Centre last night. Time to forget about policy and motions. More than 790 local government members prove that you are never too old to enjoy the circus. Evolving from a damsel in distress to a dangling delight, Rosita turned more than a few heads with her trapeze act. An upbeat magic act got the toes tapping, while many are still wondering exactly what was involved in this trick. And the circus wouldn't be complete without a clown act. The floor show over, it was time to hit Sideshow Alley and perhaps take a look into the future about what will be on the agenda for next year's conference.
With just over 12 hours to go before the first heats, 3 of the team took to the water this afternoon. Boys in some last-minute practice. Today's conditions were anything but ideal, and with the weather expected to stay the same for tomorrow, it was their last chance to prepare for poor waves. Kevin Slattery hasn't been in the water for 7 weeks due to an ear problem, but hasn't lost any of his form. His brother Jim is also in the team, and the pair are partners at Cooranbong Station. Team leader Jeff Senior says they all take their sport very seriously.
Things have changed in the last couple of years where fitness is pretty important to do our ambulance work, and I think the fitness work and the team sports go hand in hand and help us do our job a little bit better.
However, the emphasis for the Games is on participation, and the local team have warned they may have a secret weapon.
Well, I think if anyone want to bring their grandmother along the surfboard, we'll put her on and we'll give her a run. The more points, the better.
Industrial technology has been a popular school subject for the past 8 years. The InTech exhibition displaying 32 works from a field of 5,700.
We've got a variety of works. The works come from around New South Wales. We have 32 projects on exhibition at Charlestown. Of those, 8 are from the Hunter and Central Coast region.
Year 12 students have stretched imaginations and challenged skills, with judges looking for the best in creativity, innovation and craftsmanship.
They're labours of love. I think we actually get quite a few inquiries about whether the projects are for sale, but I don't think they could part with them. A lot of blood, sweat and tears have gone into them.
This checkers table, designed by 17-year-old David Cordner from Raymond Terrace High, represents months of hard work.
A lot of sweat and toil. The leg was probably the most difficult part, gluing, and it took me like about 2 months to glue all the leg up, and then I turned it on the lathe.
A child's dream, this wooden rocking horse cost $800 in materials, but may result in the start of a business enterprise.
I'm going to keep this one, and hopefully I might be taking a few orders to make some. So wait and see what happens next year.
InTech is on display at Charlestown Square until next Monday and is already proving a drawcard.
Oh, absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, it's terrific.
Really
it's
beautiful.
Great. I'm very impressed with the standard, because if you look closely at these items, everything fits almost perfectly.
Melinda Smith, NBN News.
This was part of the old market.
I'm personally delighted with the heritage nature of it.
Winching on and off ships at sea is one of the most hazardous operations helicopter and rescue crews can face. After a call this morning from the coal carrier Wallara that one of its crew had suffered a heart attack, the rescue helicopter was over the top to lower paramedics on board.
They were about 100 foot below the aircraft on the cable, and there was a couple of rather large swells come up. The ship started to pitch and roll in the swell, and the paramedics actually didn't move a great deal on the cable, but the ship moved in the swell, and unfortunately one of the paramedics was collected by the ship's superstructure, the boom that ran down the centre of the ship.
Although injured, the paramedic reached the patient, a Newcastle man in his 60s, who, despite the efforts of the crew who'd kept up CPR, failed to respond to treatment. The man's body remained on board the ship until it docked in Newcastle. The injured paramedic was also taken to hospital for observation.
So one of the paras has taken the impact. He's just had some soft tissue injury to his left shoulder, and he's gone up to hospital for some precautionary x-rays, and otherwise he's gone home, he's fine.
Also at the rescue base today, crew members farewelled the helicopter that had served so well as a temporary replacement aircraft after the Angel 1 chopper crashed in the Barrington Mountains. The Bell 212 flew 200 missions during its 7-month lease, which cost about $500,000. The aircraft is returning to Western Australia carrying extra fuel for the 3-day trip. Andrew Lobb, NBN News.
Most people have no idea that stretching 214 kilometres from Sydney to Newcastle is a pipeline which brings fuel and oil to the city. Petrol, diesel and heating oil used to come by road and ship. But in the 1970s, fuel suppliers came up with a safer and more reliable method of transportation. Since it was commissioned, more than 11 billion litres of oil and fuel have made the journey from Kurnell to Caltex's Wickham terminal, where it's sent to other outlets. 10 years on, and Caltex says the pipeline as an engineering achievement alone is worthy of celebration. But the company is also quick to point out the environmental benefits. It prevents both hazardous road and ship movements.
If you take today's volumes, it would be equivalent of 3 or 4 ships coming in the harbour a month with all the consequential environmental risks associated with that.
Rod Whittaker of Caltex believes the pipeline will last indefinitely.
Hold on for a ride through the state's 7 wonders. That's the theme adopted for this $5 million advertisement, soon to be screened nationally. The package, which represents a doubling of state government tourism funding, is aimed at generating more than 1 million extra domestic visitor nights. Can places such as Newcastle benefit directly from such a campaign?
Oh, absolutely, because if the domestic tourist visitation increases, Newcastle will obviously benefit greatly.
This area has always prided itself on some of the attributes here, the vineyards, the Port Stephens, Lake Macquarie. Are those sort of things are being traded on?
Absolutely. When you see the 7 wonders, you'll see most of what this region has to offer incorporated, because it has each of the 7 wonders, except Sydney, which is the 7th.
The fire was first sighted near the Kempsey Timber Mill, 7 kilometres from the town, at around 1 o'clock this afternoon. Strong southeasterly winds fanned the flames and they rapidly approached a nearby housing estate. Fearing the worst, 2 fire tankers and numerous bushfire personnel rushed to the scene. Firefighters worked to save homes and property well into the afternoon. It's estimated 200 to 300 hectares of bushland were burnt out in the blaze. With the dry conditions prevalent in the Kempsey district, firefighters say the end result could have been far worse. Jason Jornhoff, NBN News.
It's not such a stretch of the imagination to see an Olympic parade of nations as the Hunters young gymnasts line up for the region's championship medal presentation. Already some have been approached to attend the Institute of Sport in Canberra. Others, such as 9-year-old Brianna Brent and 7-year-old Dylan Galt, go to Sydney most weekends for coaching in elite state training teams. Competition ranges from junior to senior levels in male and female artistic gymnastics and rhythm gymnastics. At just 14, Luke Murphy has already achieved champion status and helps judge junior levels. Competitors must be all-rounders, proficient in disciplines such as bars, beam, floor work, vault and rings. Senior levels compete this evening and tomorrow at the Raymond Terrace Indoor Sports Centre. No quarter is asked and none given in the first ever National Women's Rugby Union Training Squad.
We're learning a lot every time we come together. We learn a lot, even if it's a club situation at the championship or in a camp like this. There's plenty to learn. We've been at it for a long time.
These girls have come from Darwin, the ACT, Sydney, Newcastle and country towns for a chance to pull on the green and gold in a rugby test against New Zealand next year.
We're learning all aspects of the game, from warm-up, ball skills, sprinting techniques. Then we'll get into later on, once we've practiced these, we'll get into the basics of the game, rucking, mauling.
It seems smoking was the last thing on the minds of the many that crowded into the RSL's auditorium last night for a special party. Called the Clean Air Dance, it was the Health Department's idea to educate teenagers about the dangers of smoking while doing something they enjoy. Hundreds of girls swooned over model Nathan Harvey and a young rap dancer. These types of events are proving popular in the Taree area, with more than 800 youngsters attending the recent drug offensive dance. And by the looks on the faces of those who attended last night, there could be many more such events in the future. There was water everywhere at today's event, hosted by the Clarence Town Ski Club. And although the weather was not the best, competition remained fierce. Racing over a 350-metre area, Mark Casson from Mannering Park pulled off the fastest time of the weekend with a 16.63. Just behind him was junior skier Joel Hingist. The Blackwells Park youth managed a 16.95, also over 350 metres, an impressive time for a skier of his age. Meanwhile, Newcastle's Vivian McDonald won the women's event with a 19.09. The Barefoot Series now moves to Raymond Terrace, with the next event to be held at the end of November.
The plan to remove parking meters in the city has found widespread support. For years, business owners have complained shoppers have shunned the CBD. Now all meters have been removed for at least 6 months.
People aren't prepared to put the money in, and now that they've got the parking here, they'll just come into the city, I'm sure.
It's going to advantage us in the fact that all the people who actually work in town won't be able to park and take up people who are coming into town's parking spots.
Well, it's really good. People aren't coming in for change anymore.
The trial is costing council nearly $300,000 in revenue. Only 1/3 of the original 4-hour parking spaces remain, the 2-hour limit cut by half. Signs have been amended, brown bombers are out in force. By removing parking meters from the city, council hopes to make the city centre more user-friendly. Introduced just in time to take advantage of Christmas sales, the scheme's success will be judged by shoppers. And while some are happy with the idea, others are not so impressed.
Well, I was in last week to try and find a park close to short on electricity and found that I had to drive around 3 times to even find one and then parked a block away.
Well, there's plenty of parks. Heaps of parks up on Hunter Street.
I always have trouble finding parks even if the meters are here or aren't here, so it makes no difference.
Melinda Smith, NBN News.
Melbourne Cup Day is also a time when thousands of once-a-year putters come out for a flutter. The TAB has printed special tickets to help those who want to put a few dollars on the cup. And here's a few words of advice for those novices for whom the TAB is foreign territory. The minimum bet is 50 cents and is indicated by the half square. To put $1 each way, you cross the 1 in the win section and 1 in the place area. Then all you have to do is nominate the horse number. The minimum bet on a trifecta is also 50 cents, but if it gets up, you only get half the dividend. A box trifecta costs $6 and it means you can single out 3 horses and they can come across the line in any order for you to win. An ordinary trifecta starts at 50 cents and lets you nominate 3 horses and they must finish in that order to pay. The TAB expects to turn over $48 million just on the cup and will give around $41 million back. To help people hand over the cash, TABs will be open tonight until 8:30 and reopen in the morning at 7:30. Tipster Gary Harley has selected 3 horses for your trifecta, but says you can't go past Our Pompeii as an each-way bet.
Six sites around the lake's 175-kilometre shoreline have been identified as surviving remnants of bushland in danger of being swallowed up by urban sprawl.
If these things are not dedicated, these parks are not dedicated, within the next 10 years, I'd say that the lake's in a real bad way.
Awabba Bay, Wangi Point, the Morisset Hospital site, Point Wollstonecroft and Crangan Bay are all included under the Lake Macquarie State Recreation Bill introduced to Parliament by Member for Lake Macquarie, Jeff Hunter. Local conservation groups now have the support of green heavyweights for the plan.
So if we can get people to write to the Niles and get the upper house support, we've really got to get a lot of support in that upper house to get this bill through.
Successive governments over 2 decades have let slip the chance to designate some areas of bush as state recreation area. Conservationists believe time is running out and want the bill pushed through Parliament, probably next year.
And when you look at the lake now, you know, people say, oh, but there's bushland around, but that won't be there. That won't be there in time. That's going.
Council is undertaking the Tuggerah Lakes Management Program to remove seaweed and clean up local beaches. As a result of dredging, acid sulphate soils and elements of heavy metals have been brought to the surface. Traces of arsenic, cadmium, zinc, mercury and aluminium have been detected, but Wyong's mayor says steps are being taken to make the beaches safe.
In cooperation with Soil Conservation, they have examined it, they've taken tests, and we believe that the work that's being done now, that's putting lime on the affected area, or dolomite, will neutralise the pH, which is down a bit, and the problem is solved.
Councillor Sheridan admits if action isn't taken, there is a potential danger for ratepayers and the area's marine life. He claims no major development has been threatened, as it applies only to specific areas.
This only happens, of course, in low-lying areas where the water table is very close to the surface. If you don't disturb anything below the water table, you don't have a problem. But once you go below that, you have the potential for this.
The Mayor says while the problem may be of concern now, little cause for anxiety on the coast. Jenny Crouch, NBN News.
It's taken 8 years to develop a process that combines new resins and timber veneer. The result is a craft that is half the weight of a fiberglass board, but 3 times as strong. And in the past few months, 2 Australian Malibu Championships and 2 World Wave Ski titles have been won using the new boards and skis. Because they're light, they're much easier to handle.
We actually started without fiberglass at all. We just made a board out of foam and timber. It seemed strong enough, but it didn't have the impact resistance that was required. So the fiberglass added that to it.
Each is so labour intensive to produce that only 5 are made each week, and with the surge in popularity they can't keep up with the orders, but the company is so far refusing to cash in.
This is going to be the Rolls-Royce of surfboards, and I want to keep it that way. And a mass-produced item, when you do mass-produce an item, you've got to cut the quality back, and I'm not aiming to do that at all.
At $1,200 a pop, they don't come cheap, but many of the boards won't even hit the water. Company executives, restaurants and surf shops are snapping them up as showpieces.
I like to see the satisfaction on the customer's face as well. So, you know, I quite like to see it walk out.
Shortboard inventor Bob McTavish has also been involved in the veneer design and is now opening the door to international sales.
The Americans have always looked at him as being innovative, and they certainly open their eyes when he brings out a new product.
And if they find favour overseas, the potential export earnings could be massive, and it's not unreasonable to suggest that surfing could again be responsible for putting Newcastle on the map.
10 locations are being tested from Port Stephens to Terrigal within harbours and beside sewage outfalls. Oysters are used to check for heavy metals and pesticides. The mollusk filters the water, leaving obvious signs of pollutants. A diver took a batch 15 metres down to the bottom of Newcastle Harbour, at all times keeping in contact through a special communications box. The oysters are left for 3 months, then brought up to be scientifically tested. In a 4-year program, preliminary tests have shown the waters are in reasonable shape, with the harbour in the worst condition. What's it like down there?
Can't see much. It's current's running pretty strong at the moment.
Is it dirty?
Yeah.
It's the areas immediately off the harbour entrance at the spoil dumping ground where the dredge spoil from deepening of the harbour is dumped, rather than at the ocean outfalls for the sewage discharge.
The Environmental Protection Authority says industry and sewage outfalls aren't the only pollutants. Runoff from city streets and farmers, pesticides and fertilisers are a major problem. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
Around the horseshoe and in gallery, it's stayed. So I really want council to think seriously.
It was a case of bad timing for the driver of this vehicle and her 3 elderly passengers. Police say the car was travelling northeast down Carnley Avenue just before 7 o'clock last night. Heavy rain and winds uprooted a huge gum tree around 16 metres high. It came crashing down onto the roof of the Laser. Traffic was blocked while rescue crews used a chainsaw to remove the load. Ambulance officers say miraculously no one was injured in the freak accident, the driver escaping with only minor lacerations to her hands.
I was just driving down the road and I saw the tree coming down and I just ducked, I just slid under and that's what saved me.
Meanwhile, a cigarette is being blamed for this head-on collision on Main Road at Cardiff this afternoon. Police say the 20-year-old driver of the Chrysler swerved onto the wrong side of the road after attempting to brush cigarette ash away from her lap. The 21-year-old driver of the Toyota suffered neck injuries, lacerations to the face and bruising. Her 6-month-old baby boy escaped serious harm but was taken with his mother to the John Hunter for observation. Police say his life was saved thanks to his baby car seat. Melinda Smith, NBN News.
Just before 2:30, police received a call that 2 trucks had crashed on the F3 freeway and that drums on board one truck were leaking. What followed was a textbook operation.
All emergency services responded. We had the Bushfire Brigade, the New South Wales Fire Brigade, the ambulance and the police service, and they all worked very well together. The Bushfire Brigade were here first and controlled the situation until the arrival of the New South Wales Fire Brigade, and they have now taken over this situation for fire control and also for the chemical spillage. And the Newcastle Fire Brigade hazmat unit is on its way.
The driver of the tabletop truck had pulled to the side of the road to sleep. The southbound car carrier clipped the parked truck and forced both into an embankment. Both drivers suffered minor head injuries in the impact and were taken to hospital, leaving the fire brigade to figure out exactly what was leaking and how best to deal with it. Initial action preventing the spill going further. As the hazardous materials unit travelled from fire headquarters in Newcastle, a computer linked to a fax machine on board provided the crew with details of the leaking thinners. To avoid any risk while the drums were removed, the highway was closed to all traffic for a short time. In recent times, emergency services have put considerable effort into planning for incidents like this. And although today's spill was not a large one, the way it's been handled is a good indication that that planning has been effective. Jim Sullivan, NBN News.
It's being hailed as a new era in business opportunities. The Industry Development Centre, associated with the Industrial Supplies Office, will give free advice to multinational companies down to the operator of the corner store on how to buy Australian.
There is a market there for locally manufactured goods to replace imported goods.
Trevor Woodhouse will run the program in the Hunter. Chairman of the Development Centre, Peter Morris, introduced the government-funded concept to local business leaders today. The idea began in Victoria 10 years ago. It has spread Australia-wide, and the result for the Aussie economy has been hair-raising.
Since its inception, there's been almost $1 billion worth of imported goods replaced by Australian manufactured goods.
Local companies have supported the move, one businessman saying he has always wanted to buy Australian, but it can be time-consuming finding that product. The Industry Development Centre will do the job for him. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
Remember the 50s? Australia was getting back on its feet after the Second World War, and around the home it was the age of mixmasters, the electric iron, and families gathered around the wireless. The good old days. Or were they? The exhibition Mums Stayed Home features much of the 50s memorabilia and focuses on the lives of 4 women who were bringing up their children in that era. In a time when working mothers were frowned upon, the women, all from different backgrounds, described their lives as far from rosy.
After that initial nostalgia, there's a realisation that maybe things have changed for the better, even though some good things have been lost in the process.
From the past back into the present, the Regional Museum is being kept extra busy with the opening of another exhibition called Mighty Science. Aimed at children between the ages of 3 and 8, it's all about hands-on learning.
If you actually do an activity, you see for yourself how it works, and then that encourages you to think about it and work out what's actually happening.
Activities include a human jigsaw, an oversized piano and a set of pipes. But the favourite by far is the Cooperation Centre. Both exhibitions are open until January.